Hello again, I am Blunty, and you bet I'm not quite done with the Monster Hunter Wilds benchmark and beta stuff yet. Never mind when the full game launches. So, if you've been hunting since Monster Hunter World, and especially at launch of World when we all discovered together what a pig it was to run, even on the most popular GPUs of the day, and even the high-end GPUs were struggling to max out the game and get a nice stable 60 FPS, which, if your rose-coloured nostalgia filters have made you forget about those days, well, I've got all those details and how they compare directly to how Monster Hunter Wilds is performing relative to all that in another video, which seems to have made a lot of people quite mad for some reason. A lot of very aggressive comments I got on that video, but everything in that video is the truth, so I don't know, man. Gamers are an odd crowd, aren't we? Anyway, World had performance issues, and one of the recommended steps towards optimizing performance that you'd hear repeated in the community very, very often was to turn off the volumetrics completely. And sure enough, it did offer a noticeable uptick in frame rates, but personally, I never used it, even when I was desperate for more frame rate, because I thought it made the game look way worse. And I would rather fine-tune nearly any other graphics option to get my frame rate where I want it to be before I would turn off volumetrics. Volumetrics was the last-ditch option as far as I was concerned. So anyway, now we have Wilds, and Wilds is a piggy also to run. But Wilds doesn't let you turn off volumetrics. At least not on the beta, which runs on quite an old version of the game code, nor in the benchmark, running on much, much more recent code. Well, there's options to turn it down, but not off, and that has frustrated some people who remember how much it helped in World. However, as is often the way with gaming on PC, what the game offers in its menus is not always where customization stops. And in the case of Wilds, people have indeed discovered a setting in the config.ini file, which is the file that games commonly store your custom settings in. There is indeed an entry for flagging the volumetric fog to completely off. So after pulling up the game's local files, you find the config file in the directory, you open it, you search for volumetrics, you find the entry labeled volumetric fog control _ enable, and change its true value to false, capital F. To be honest with you, I don't actually know if the capital is vital in false. I can't be asked checking it, but it very often is the deal in this kind of thing, in this kind of configuration file, that they are case sensitive, so you may as well just do that. You just have to press the shift key once. Not a lot of extra work. Come on. Save the file, start the game up, and you're running without volumetric fog. Now, while this is an aesthetic thing, and therefore subject to personal taste, I think that, just like it was in Monster Hunter World before it, that this makes the game look significantly worse. It's way too crunchy, I guess would be the word for it. The contrast feels overblown. The naturalist sense of depth through the environment all the way to the background is basically destroyed. It makes it look like kind of an older game somehow. And the atmospheric presentation of a real natural environment with, dust and whatnot carried through the air, all that environmental storytelling is just destroyed completely. It's gone, literally. So maybe you like it, and maybe you think the extra clarity and apparent contrast is better. I don't agree, but hey, not like I can stop you from doing this, is it? But here comes the kick in your shins. If you were imagining and hoping that this would be a magic bullet to save you a bunch of extra headroom in your frame rate, I'm about to ruin your day, and I'm sorry to do this. Turns out, there's basically zero appreciable effect on the frame rate, even in the notorious little spot down here by the river bend that tanks everybody's frame rate. This is probably why there is no option to turn it off, because there's no actual benefit to turning it off performance-wise. And of course, the art director of this game wants you to experience, how he wants the game to look, which includes, all the weather stuff, the significantly enhanced atmospherics, the more pleasant and softer ambient lighting, the noticeably improved visual depth through the whole frame that volumetrics bring, amongst other more subtle stuff. And if you're wondering why this exact same, graphic settings could make such a big difference in World, but do basically nothing in Wilds when it comes to performance, the answer is simple. They run on completely different game engines. Clearly the one Wilds runs on is way, way more efficient at doing volumetric stuff. See, World ran on MT framework, and Wilds, like Rise before it, runs on Capcom's newest in-house game engine, RE Engine. Now, overall, personally, I think I've made it clear that I consider the full volumetrics vastly more visually pleasant, and considering that it does nothing to hinder performance, I will of course be leaving it on. But I will admit, in the case of at least nighttime here in the Windswept Plains, because of course that's all we can test right now, I do not think it looks that bad at all. It looks okay, it looks fine, at least in clear weather. But during the day, while I'd call it tolerable, especially if it did give us a big boost in frame rates, I'd consider using it when all else failed in fiddling with the settings, trying to get, extra frames. But during the most dramatic weather, like the storm, which these severe weather conditions are a huge part of the story and world building in Wilds, oh man, it just looks horrifically ugly. And I don't think I'm going to get many people arguing with me about that. It's just flat out uglier, right? I mean, you can try and convince me otherwise. I don't think you're going to do it. So that alone would push it out of consideration for me.
Lightning has them amped up. Might be able to use them as a trap.
But yeah, one last time, it does nothing at all to performance, one way or the other. The only reason to use this would be if you enjoy the visuals more this way, which most of the time you might, but yeah, when it comes to these storms, I can't even imagine trying to play that way. It's just, ew. But, that is a you thing, so pull that trigger and take a look at it in your own game, on your own rig, with your own settings, while we still have the beta for a couple more days, and see how you feel about it, and then make the call when the game launches. Thanks for watching. I am Blunty. I will catch you next time. Hopefully you found this useful, informative, interesting. Thank you as always to the patrons who are a big, fat help. I'll catch you next time.